It's not in a feed, it's in the stories. I'm trying again, so thank you for your patience. You know, that's what happened when super smart professors, which actually kudos to you, Andrew. You're not really in social media ever or much, so it's not unusual that you're not able to connect straight away, but we'll make it work. Just give us a second. I'm communicating with Andrew online as we talk, so I should be in a second it will all work out. I'm not connecting either, I don't know why. Just I'm inviting Andrew myself.
Okay, am I here?
Oh, here you go.
Okay, it worked.
Wonderful.
It worked.
So great to
Thank you. Thank you, the gods of Instagram. It
Oh
worked.
my God, I'm telling you. That's why I even mentioned that, you kudos to you that you're not exposed to social media. And actually, I'm very happy that you're having this problems or issues. I don't know how to call it, but it's really nothing wrong with it. So, but great to see you, and thank you very much for taking your time from your very, very busy schedule. And I'm sure it's a beautiful afternoon in France in Fontainebleau. Um, I'm happy that you're joining all of us. I will say a few words the way it works. I'll just say a few words about conversations with Olga in general. I will do a very short introduction about you, and then we just talk
Okay,
like
sounds
we
good
always do.
to me.
Yeah, fantastic. So this is episode number 54, believe it or not, and many of you who've seen this other episodes before or listened to me. I've started this program right here in my dining room during the COVID when I had more time, and I decided to connect to my amazing, wonderful, talented, kind, giving people whom I've met through my journey, and for them to share the insights of their life stories and their inspirations. So I'm really, really fortunate, as I said, to have by now 53 people who've been talking to me, and today for our episode number 54. I would like to welcome my very good friend, Andrew Shipilov. As a matter of fact, it's a little bit of a different episode, I should say, today, because we probably will have tables turned a little bit, as I will be the one, from what I understand, interviewed as well at some parts of the conversation. So, but just a few words before who Andrew is. He is a professor of strategy at INSEAD. Most of you know what it is. It's an international business school with campuses in France, Singapore, and Abu Dhabi. He leads executive education program on partnership and strategic alliances, sits on the INSEAD board, and advises on innovation worldwide, including with the Abu Dhabi government. But I met Andrew first in a very different setting during a very special project we have put together with my dear friend Jenny Santi, who probably is listening now, or she will listen to our program later. And it took place at the Rockefeller Foundation campus at Lake Como. It was a gathering on celebrity philanthropy. Andrew moderated several conversations during that week and gently challenging all of us to rethink how we approach ideas, how we bring up the influence and how the way we work in general. He taught us how to actually how creativity isn't just a spark, but a way of seeing the world that can be learned and taught. Well, we'll discuss that a bit later. Today, we do speak about strategy, yes, but we also will talk about curiosity, emotional intelligence, family values, and the art of creative connection. So let's begin. Welcome, Andrew, and thank you so much. So let's start right from the beginning. Where does innovation come from?
Well, that's a great question, Olga. I'd like to make this pan multi-million or billion-dollar question because we all want to be innovative. We want to learn innovation, but at the end of the day, we need to agree what innovation is. And to me, and to many people who do research and innovation, it's really a combination of novelty and usefulness. So you need to have a new product, a new service, which hopefully people haven't
Yes.
seen before, but it also needs to be useful. So that's it, novelty and usefulness.
Yes, and you've done a lot of, well, that's as simple as it sounds. I know that it's not that simple, but thank you for that. You've researched innovation so deeply, and I know that one of your ideas is that creativity emerges when we combine things that were not connected actually before. I would love to hear about possibly some of your favorite examples from fashion, science, or even the social media.
Well, given that everybody is interested in innovation, creativity, we could look for examples in many places. So in culture, for example, let's take Andrei Ryu, right? So he's a musician, classically trained musician, but for those of us who've been to his shows, performances, experiences, no matter concerts, how you call this, he really is connecting to things which are not really connected. He would bring together classical music with dancing. Sometimes it almost feels like he's bringing classical music to the Oktoberfest. And when people go to his concerts, they can listen to the music, they can dance, they can drink beer, and like Germans with da 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 with their mugs of beer. You can do that at underused performances. So that, to me, from the world of culture, that's a really interesting example of something novel and then apparently useful for many people. Going back in time, if we think about fashion, Yves Saint Laurent and this very famous fashion designer that requires no introduction. For me, one of his most creative collections was the Ballet Russe collection, where he basically takes inspiration from the Russian ballet, from the Russian traditional dress, and he incorporates that into the haute couture in France, and he does the fashion show in Hotel Intercontinental in Paris. And this is back in the 70s. I'm not sure if I was born there, but I certainly I love to see those pictures in Yves Saint Laurent Museum. From the research and kind of the crowd I hang out with, some of the most creative research is done at the intersection of fields. So I like many research projects, but I specifically like the ones where people use brain scans to see which parts of our brain or people's brain are activated when they see friends versus non-friends.
Yes.
And the finding from this research is that information about friends is encoded somewhere else in our brain relative to non-friends. And this is really cool. I don't know what the practical implication is, but this is a really, really cool insight.
I'm sure
And
neuroscientists will find a way how to interpret it, and I'm sure well, it's making waves already. So yes,
our brains are complex, but
yeah.
from your standpoint, Olga, so you exist, I would say, in a somewhat different world. You don't do brain scans, but you do
Well,
amazing
depends.
you do amazing events which influence people brains, which are like really dazzling in Asia. So how do you see this idea of innovation, creativity? What are your favorite examples?
Well, to be honest with you, I can totally relate to some of the examples that you mentioned. By the way, I've worked with the foundation of Saint Laurent, and it's fantastic. It's an unbelievable. I was involved in a project years ago with his exhibition that Actually, unfortunately, never took place in former Soviet Union, but it was amazing in Russia at that time already. So, in going back to my connections, they're also very unexpected. You know, there are colors and moods, there are seasons and menus and cultures and time periods. You know, and sometimes even the haircut, because a lot of people mention that, you know, I always have the same haircut. Yes, I do. And actually even written a small passage about it in my little black book, where I explain the history of a haircut. And when if you do that and you go more in depth, you kind of relate the haircut to the period of time period of culture at that time, of the emotions, of do's and don'ts. And so anything and everything inspires me. That's actually the whole chapter in one of my books, my big book, Save the Date, where the chapter is called Anything and Everything, and this is very true. So it's a curiosity, I think. It's in depth thinking, and it's passion.
Cool. No, this is really exciting.
And you know, going back also, that maybe continuing about curiosity and recombination, you once said that innovation happens when two unexpected ideas meet, and actually you just gave an example about it. Why do you think recombination is such a powerful engine for creativity?
Well, I think recombination is at the source of life. So, I mean, I think I won't be overstating the point, but when human beings or living creatures are born, they're a result of recombination, right? The parents, they sort of produce an offspring, and that offspring has random elements of their parents' DNA. So then it recombines, and that's why sometimes the kid has their father's nose and the mother's eyes, or the other way around. And yeah, so human evolution, living evolution is a product of recombination. And maybe that's why it's not surprising on the cognitive level when we see something being recombined. So our DNA screams and says, I love recombination because this is how I was created. And recombination is at the core of Andre Rieu, or at the core of most
Yeah,
creative efforts. He's combining classical music and dancing. It's all about entertainment. Another example which I love is why do we have really nice Mac fonts, and we always had it, and why Windows was so slow to getting nice fonts was because Steve Jobs took a class on calligraphy before he I guess I wouldn't say designed the operating system, but he certainly had an influence on Mac operating system, and he certainly had an impact on how the graphical user interface would look like. So a person takes a class on calligraphy, that sort of changes the way he
yeah.
sees the world, and then he wants our fonts, the computers, the bits and bytes to produce beautiful images. So these are examples of recombination, and that produces really powerful output.
That's fantastic. And then that also brings me to sort of, I guess, something related, which is observation in general. Like Steve Jobs, he observed, he learned, he studied, and he created. So observation also comes when we travel. And, you know, I always gravitate in general to global citizens. Even my kids are definitely global citizens being raised in multicultural environment and traveling the world. So that really helps them to be creative and to be unusually probably curious, I should say. Do you think that living across different countries makes someone more creative, or is it more about how we observe and absorb the world around us in general?
Well, I think the two are related, Olga, because there's a lot of research in social psychology, and much of it actually was done here at INSEAD, where we study our MBA students. Because our classrooms, imagine the Masters of Administration program, 1,000 MBAs, about 200 Masters of Management, and there's no single dominant nationality. So we've got people from all over the
Yeah.
world, from all walks of life, and there was a lot of research done on them, and outside of that setting showing that traveling and especially living abroad enhances creativity. One of my academic papers was basically born in a museum in Paris. Now, I haven't traveled, fair enough, but I went to a different city, believe it or not, 45 minutes from Fontainebleau. So I did have to take a train, go to the art museum in Paris, and we're talking, with my wife about creativity and stuff, and all of a sudden, boom, something hit me. I could do this kind
Yeah.
of research project. And your kids the same. My kids are multicultural, so for sure, when you travel, when you move yourself from point A to point B, that somehow opens your mind and makes you pay attention to things. But it's also creativity could come from, as we know, working with different people, right? So I can sit in Fontainebleau and work with amazing colleagues here who come from all over the world, from Ireland, from Australia, from Italy, from the US, Israel, and so forth. And you talk to different people, they give you different ideas because they sort of hang out in different cultural spaces. They have their own friends, they have their own networks, and then you talk to them and all of a sudden you've got this creative inspiration
Exactly.
yourself. So I would say if you do have a travel budget, travel, that's really good for your creativity. But even if you're short of travel budget, then hanging out with different people would do the trick.
100%. I absolutely agree with you.
And you also said that your kids are multicultural, and you have an interesting personal travel story, right? You were not Singaporean, you were not sort of native bred and born Singaporean. So how did your experience in the past, eventually ending up in Singapore, help you to be creative?
Well, because of exposure, I suppose, exposure and interest and curiosity. As you know, I was born in former Soviet Union. I've immigrated to United States, to New York, when the Soviet Union at that time was completely closed. So it was a revelation for me to move into the city like New York at that time. And I studied there and I went to my college and graduate school, and then I moved to Singapore, which is absolutely totally different country, different culture as well. So it was really, I guess, in a certain parts, a shocking move from one place to another. But the human being as such that it adapts, but it's also a sponge. So I've embraced all these experiences, and when I was in former Soviet Union, I grew up in a very cultured family. I went to the school of music. I studied violin for 10 years. I'm not a musician, but I love music. I went to the School of History of Arts. I cannot paint at all, but I love art. I read a lot of books. I went to the literature school, but I'm not a writer. A little bit, but not really. So all this basically perhaps expressed maybe at the end my ability or my wish or my passion to create the experiences where I can express my own self. And it's definitely intertwined with different experiences of my life story, of my journey. So yes, it's an instinct for storytelling, I believe, and recombination as well.
Yeah, no, it's very, I think it's very natural.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and sometimes when I hear people often say, I'm not creative, but can creativity be taught? And this is what you're doing at INSEAD, partially or mostly or fully. Or do you think it has to be something that you are born with?
Well, it's a classic nature versus nurture debate, right?
Yeah,
So clearly, people like, Leonardo da Vinci, Steve Jobs, they're just like probably born. Some people are born creative. I remember on CNN a few days ago, I was reading about those robbers, one of the few people in the world who managed to escape from Alcatraz.
yeah,
And they were super creative in terms of like creating a raft and like doing decoys and things like that. Unfortunately, they did not have the social environment to kind of turn their creativity into something good. But apparently, and if you guys are interested, read on CNN "Escape from Alcatraz," a really, really interesting article a few days ago. So yes, there is some creative gene, I think, or maybe a combination. But for most of us mortals who are not kind of born super creative, I think it can be taught. And I've seen that be taught, at least in the business world. Now, for sure, there is a framework there are frameworks to teach innovation, to teach creativity. I've listened to an interview of James Dyson that he gave a few years ago, and he also said that, yeah, innovation, you can teach that, you can learn that. And some of the frameworks that you would use to learn creativity would have some of the following components. Maybe they would ask you to start to take a critical view about the current status quo. So, they teach you, okay, let me look at the world and try to see what are the assumptions, what are the bases underlying the status quo before you start disrupting it. What's wrong with the status quo? So what's wrong with the assumptions? What needs to be fixed? So who could be new product users of products or services that were changing? Some kind of a systematic approach where to look outside of the box. Another thing would probably be asking yourself, okay, I have this idea that I picked up from this outside of the box environment. Do I have all of the resources that I need to produce a product or service
Yes.
that I just imagined? And what do I need to work with? Who do I need to work with to get this new thing off the ground? So it's a structure, right? Starting from the status
Yeah.
quo to who do you work with to get things on the ground can be learned, can be taught.
Yes.
So, and I mean, to me, it's not surprising that somebody says, I'm not a super creative person, but I learned how to be creative. And I mean, I've seen many people like that during my 20 years of teaching at INSEAD. And Olga, when you and I even sort of connected a couple of weeks ago in Singapore, we had this conversation that in your world of organizing events, that kind of creativity can also be probably taught and learned. You've got different cultural elements that you recombine, such as the etiquette, the menu, the flowers, but I'm sure you also have intuition. So I'm sure that your experiences over decades of organizing these events must have given you some inner feel, kind of the thinking outside of the box and passion. So let's say if I gave you a creative assignment, if I came to you and said, Olga, organize an event, what questions would you ask back to me to create that project?
Well, I agree with you with everything what you said mostly, but in my world, and at least the way I stage, create, and run events, there is also passion for sure, and there's also an intuition, and of course an experience, because if you can be as creative as you want or if you feel, but if you don't have an ability to stage, as you rightly said, a proper event, a proper activation, and you don't know the final elements that will basically be major ones in take or break it, the event is not going to happen or is not going to be what you want or what clients want to. So, after over 25 years being in this industry, actually, for me, it's almost a muscle memory. There are basic questions, of course, that I ask to get the event brief, especially if it's for the brands or for the certain conferences or symposium or anything like that. And there are such a number of guests, the agenda for the day, the goal, the theme sometimes, etc. There are usually the answers that won't change as we continue planning the event, but then there is another layer. And the one that I truly enjoy navigating. With many clients, I'm very fortunate, and certain projects I usually don't sometimes even need to get the full brief because I sometimes get a carte blanche in creating something based on their wish list or based on their mood or something that they want to express. And many clients, or most of the clients, trust me, and I have over 90% probably repeat clients, which is great. But the questions I ask them is to tease out some of the answers from them that are usually not as easy to articulate. I need to read their vibe, I need to detect their mood, and I need to envision the atmosphere that I feel the client and their guests or our guests would like to have and enjoy, which I think is a creativity down to the smallest details. So there are usually special elements that I need to feel and express through the events, and on every stage. This comes from learning in depth, of course, about the brand, if it is a brand event, knowing the technicalities of staging the event, that means the technical part of it and everything else. But it also comes with intuition, with the storytelling, and with the curiosity, because as I mentioned already, there are so many other things, so many other components that get into the work when you create and you cook the something that you want to create as a memory. So I try to engage with the client in conversations where the feelings are expressed, or where I entice them actually, and I give them a space to provide those feelings, so at least to share with me a little bit. And I always encourage them to be open-minded, because I don't do copy and paste events. I do want to create the memories. So I like the clients, or the partners, the clients, the brands, to have the space of open-mindedness. And this is what I strive for. And it's always super important, of course, for especially for the brands, to follow the brief to the T. And I do that, but there are elements where I can elevate that brief.
Hmm.
You know, there's a sandwich and there is a sandwich. There is a lighting and there's a lighting. There's a flower and there's a flower. Yes. But to weave this whole in, it's like, you know, it's like making the lace where everything is interconnected. And this is what I do, no matter how simple, how complicated, how technical the brief is. So this is something that I take pride of, and this is something what I'm known actually for.
Yeah, but you still are given a strict brief, right? So the real magic, of course, is how you interpret
Exactly.
this, and does it
Yes.
feels both
Yes.
unexpected and iconic.
Yes.
So kind of different way to ask the previous question. So from your perspective, what defines truly creative work under constraint?
I think the envisioning of the event in itself, also knowing what will work and what will not work. And this is something that you, I guess, maybe can learn throughout the years of experience. But it is also development of the relationship with and trust with clients, and this is something super important, because it's like, you know, everywhere you go to the doctor whom you trust, you have to let him lead you. You go and renovate your house and you have an interior designer, you have to trust this person. So the same goes with me. When client hires me, uh, uh, they if they know me, that means we already have a trust with one another. We work as a family, we work as a team. And I think this commitment always makes me and my team go an extra mile. The relationships that I built are super important. This is what happens with doesn't matter how the brief is strict, you still create a magic, you still create an excitement. And there is no such thing as, from my side, that to say no. There is always something that we look into to find the solutions. I think this is when the magic happens.
Yeah, but your events are also about food, right? So,
Of
we
course.
see amazing representations, and some of your events are influenced by your past experiences, maybe what you had some food in the past. Others are complete inventions, right? So from the culinary gastronomical
Yes.
perspective. So if we like go to food, and we all like food to some extent, what makes a dish, a gastronomical dish, truly creative in your eyes?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm a foodie by nature. I like food. I appreciate it. I also go in depth into likes and dislikes and different cultures, different countries. It interests me. I also very much aware of the seasonal ingredients, and this is something that immediately play a big factor in whatever menus that I create. It's freshness. It's something that I personally can gravitate to, because in my opinion, serving caviar, foie gras, or truffles is not going to make it, because people are, especially the events that I stage, uh, for the clients or for the guests that I invited or participate, nobody's starving in this world for the events that I create. So, and it's not a really a show off if somebody serves the caviar on top of Wagyu beef and on top of the foie gras. This is not my interpretation of gourmet and beautiful experience. That's definitely something that anybody can do. So my notion about creating the gourmet experience is more like a staging the experience. It's something that people will remember, something that I want to uh, uh, introduce, I should say, to guests. And sometimes, I do quite a lot of the financial and very, very serious conferences and, with crypto and F1 and financial and bank events and stuff like that, where the main component is obviously very serious. And there are a lot of breaks in between, and there is a lunch and dinner and everything else. So I always have an intention to introduce the lifestyle element to this quote unquote boring and serious events. And that is the only way how you can do it, through the food and through its presentation. Because this is where emotions are shown. One of my favorite movies, and to be honest with you, I've been quoting this movie quite a number of times. In general, it's called Babette's Feast, and it always comes to my mind. It's film shows how basically the single meal, lovingly prepared, becomes not just a feast for the senses, but it's a mirror of a soul. This is, to me, is not only about what is served, as I mentioned, but it's how it invites emotions and intimacy, and how it brings people into conversations and the relaxation, and it gives them this ability to express themselves with much more open mind and feelings. So this is what this is why I should say the food element for all my events, no matter how serious or lavish they are, is always very important.
Okay, well, switching gears from food, let's talk about fashion. And you and I often speak about symbolism, how design, fashion, even gestures
Yeah.
carry deeper meaning. So, what role do you think fashion plays in shaping identity or challenging norms?
Well, first of all, actually, I would like to ask you a question, because you did some research on fashion and you shared with me. And perhaps I would like to hear a professor's point of view about symbolism and based on a fashion.
Well, it's sort of tables are turning as we speak. So for me, the most interesting is Chanel with her little black dress,
Mhm.
because to me
Yeah.
that's really the ultimate example of symbolism and recombination. So if you think about it, so she's coming up with a dress which many people compare it to Model T. If you
Yes.
remember Ford
Yes.
back in the early 20th century, so last century, Model T, the black color. So she's taking something which is
Yeah.
associated with a car, and she's incorporated that in a dress. She is using unconventional cloth such as jersey, and and the other thing which was not really a thing back then, she is taking inspiration from men's clothing, right?
Yes.
So basically it's a lady's dress with inspiration from men's clothing, Model T, color black, jersey fabric, and on top of it, black color was also associated with mourning. And
Yes.
this is after World War One. Lots of people are dead. Lots of people are mourning. They're walking in the black outfits, and then she comes up with this iconic garment which people like to wear. Like nobody forced women to wear the little black dress. It became a thing, but there were so many different symbolic elements were recombined
Yes.
into this. You could read into this that during the war, many women had to do the men's jobs, and they were still mourning, or maybe it's basically just elegance and underscoring the femininity of life. And to me, like if you really forced me to say, okay, choose one fashion item that is really an example of symbolism recombination, and if I had only one choice, I would say yes, little black dress for
Yeah.
sure.
It's very iconic, and I completely agree with you. I can share with you some of the examples of the themes, for example, that I've staged for the events that I can totally create from scratch, and there is basically not really much brief, and some of them, or many of them, were deeply expressed through style. Because educating guests and drawing emotional responses and linking it to the style and to the history of certain style elements and sparking the curiosity. This is what it's all about. And just even recently, and I want guests to remember, because as I said, I create memories, and for me it's very, very important. So like just recently, few weeks ago, I staged the ball. It was for the Food from the Heart Foundation, Passion Ball, that I've been staging for many years in the past. My theme was based on Frida Kahlo's life. And the theme's name was Life in Full Bloom. So I encouraged the guests, and I weaved in every single element of life story of Frida Kahlo and her strengths and her suffering and her creativity and her talents, of course, through this theme. And of course, the style played a major part of it, and the food as well, by the way. Well, lucky for me, the chef at the Edition Hotel where I staged this ball is an amazing Mexican chef. So I was very, very lucky in this respect. But yes, so the style played a major part for me creating this event. And another example, for example, years ago, I staged the Revolution Ball. That was yet for another charity for Singapore Repertory Theatre. And, people can take it literally. Revolution, okay, we need to talk about the Soviet Revolution. But it's not. There is always an element of education. Revolution, it could be cultural revolution, it could be sex revolution, French revolution, communist revolution, and etc. And this is exactly what I encouraged for guests to study, to create, and to think, and to come up with. So the style is definitely a major element for any of this kind of events. So it's a platform where guests can basically subtly show their own personal interests and values, and can learn something in the process. I will share with you also another very kind of interesting event, because as I said, for me, when I especially have an ability or the green light to create an event and I don't need to follow the very, very detailed brief, I like to immerse people in something that they didn't know before, or to encourage them to learn. So that A, they feel better about themselves, B, they definitely enjoy the process, and C, they remember it. So there was a little event that I've staged for a very high profile brand, watch brand. And the event was about the smallest um, secret watch for ladies watch at that time that was actually conceived in 1920s, and I weaved in the whole story of the secret watch and the secret element, the secret compartment in the watch itself, next to in the dial, where ladies were storing the secret messages to their husbands, to their lovers, and things like that. So I took it a little bit further, and I created this activation for the guests to learn how to decipher a secret code by taking the Leonardo da Vinci's secret code elements and studies. And I taught them how to read the secret code so they can go home, open the little envelope, I provided a little mirror, be able to learn this secret code, read it, and then basically get a gift if you read it properly. So something like that is definitely will be remembered. And, it's all about details. But this passion and intuition has to come to play. So yes, you can teach creativity, but there is, I think, more to it than this, in my case at least.
Interesting. Really cool.
And I think, continuing with regards to, in general, the behavior between people and behavior of, let's say, my team at Adagio Events, whom I'm very proud of, and most of my members actually been with me for more than 20 years, and relationship with people in the company or people in the brands that I work with. I would like to mention my dear friend Molly, who wrote a beautiful book on emotional inclusion. And to me, it's very important. She talks about the importance of compassion and urging leaders to recognize that emotional well-being, and it's not a luxury, it is a necessity. And it reevaluates the way you behave in generally, but it also gives you an ability to create with more passion and more openly and with much more happiness. Because when the workplaces value that kind of emotional intelligence, everything else comes into play with much ease. I just wanted to share that because I think after reading that book and after observing so many companies that I work with, I think it's extremely important point.
Sure, and I agree. Psychological safety, emotional inclusion are really, really important elements of any creativity exercise. Because, like, what has to happen during any creative process, people have to air their ideas,
Yes,
right? So, I perhaps may want to put caviar on the Wagyu beef, but even if I know that you would probably not like that, I still need to be comfortable opening up and giving you the reasons why do I think
yes,
foie gras has to be mixed up with Wagyu beef and with caviar for this specific audience, hypothetically speaking, and I should be assured that you would not get mad at me, and that you would even if you disagree with me, you will not get mad at me. And when I teach creativity here at INSEAD, I tell people that when we run those hackathons where we start with 40 ideas, we bring them down to 20, and then we bring them down eventually to one or two, we're selecting ideas, we're not selecting people.
yeah,
So when somebody gives an element of an idea, and that element is not really kept in the final
yes,
product, it's not a bad thing. It's the nature of the creative process,
yes,
and that's people have to feel vulnerable
yes,
when they open up, and that can only be done with there is like emotional inclusion, there's trust, there is
yes.
emotional safety, and without that, I think no creative exercise, no creative process is going to work.
I agree with you, and that's why people often feel safe in teams, and there are other places where they would not feel safe. And if you remember, if I should mention, well, you don't remember, but neither do I. But we all know and we read about the salons of the past, right, where the ideas, curiosity, and culture were really super important. Different minds met across different disciplines. There was a magic in this mix, but to me, it is an art of hosting. It's also the art of understanding the human being, being compassionate, and this all plays hand in hand with the creativity. It's not just about the superficial beauty or refinement. It's about creating a space where curiosity can flourish, where questions matter as much as the answers. And this is the spirit that has always been important to me when I create and stage my events. And I can feel actually very often that something quietly transformative happens at that time for all of us, not only for me, but for the people who come and enjoy or experience it. So, and that's something that I strive for. And sometimes, the I can even talk a little bit about the influences of that time because that's what it was all about. Like somebody like Diana Vreeland or Coco Chanel, as you mentioned, or Jackie Kennedy, and all these people, they were able to influence not with volumes, like I must say on IG these days or TikTok, but in depth, in substance. Although I have nothing against IG, obviously, or TikTok, it's obviously the part of our lives, but it was not a trend. It was really more of a transformation for them and the influence for all of us. And of course, continuing on this, I obviously cannot ignore it, and we should talk about social media and AI and how it is reshaping creativity faster than we can process? Or some at
Yeah,
times,
well, I mean,
what do you
yeah,
think
so
about those trends, Andrew? And
we're
what?
talking about social media on social media, and this is really really interesting. And but neither you and I are avatars, or neither you AI or AI bots.
Yes.
But I think that social media does create conditions for millions of people to be creative and evolve an idea really fast. So, you can, all those stories about people starting on some kind of flash mob and that evolves over time, and the final product of that flash mob is different from people initially have thought about. Now, when you think about AI creativity is tricky because we don't really know what AI is thinking when it's coming up with creative
Yeah.
ideas. And now, when people think about AI, I think by now everybody thinks about Gen AI. But Gen AI is just basically it's a probabilistic model which adds the word after previous words based on some probability. And when we talk about like mid journey and those things, it basically adds a pixel as a function of the pixels
Mm-hmm.
it saw before. So, like how it does it and what decision rules AI uses, well, in fact, this large language models, they don't use decision rules. Again, they use associations and probabilities. So it's sort of, can AI enhance human creativity? Yes, for sure. Can AI be creative? I don't really know if we could call AI as creative. I don't know. It's like AI does not have friends or family. AI doesn't travel. It basically the thing read everything on the internet. If you ask sometimes ChatGPT, what do you do on weekends? It could say, well, I go meet friends and family. Well, guess, dude, you don't have friends or family. You're a bot. Um,
Exactly.
so, I, so I'm really having a hard time basically when saying that AI can be creative, but I'm certainly there, and that's what I teach at INSEAD. I teach people how to use AI to be more creative themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I would do that is we would first teach them the human basics of creativity. We'll put them through the hackathons and this grueling work of coming up with creative ideas themselves. And then let's say I've got a program called Blue Ocean Strategy, which is sort of a tag, sort of a umbrella label for the creativity concepts which were invented here at INSEAD. And at the end of the program, we say, okay, you've learned all the tools, the frameworks. Now let's use AI to take it to the next level. And sometimes people are very cheeky. They say, yes, so you just, we spent all this money, and then you're telling us that we can just like download this into ChatGPT and get it for like 20 euros a month. And I tell them, no, you cannot do that because in ChatGPT, you still don't know what comes out of it. Or even if you ask ChatGPT, Chat, create a blue ocean strategy for me, it won't do that really
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And you would not be able to sort of separate good ideas or bad ideas unless you have that in your mind. So AI as a helper for creativity, absolutely. For human
Yes.
creativity, most of the research on AI and creativity shows that AI is an enabler. It can make humans more
Yes.
creative.
Absolutely.
Can AI be creative? My answer is I still don't know, and I don't even know what creativity from the standpoint of AI actually means.
Well, thank you. And I had a few episodes back. I actually had a very intense and very in-depth conversation with the AI guru, and I'm very curious what she will comment. And I will ask her, and I'll tell you later on your concept and your revelations on sharing. But thank you so much. We have a few minutes left, and for the past several episode sessions, I've created that little narrative where the guest is asking a future guest any question that he likes. So I have to post a question to you as well from my previous guest, from Alvin, who actually is also in the industry of fashion and style. He's a famous stylist. And his question was, do you he obviously didn't know that you're going to be my guest, so it's very incognito. How does the pain help you in your life? It's loaded question, but
Yeah.
feel free.
That's a good one. So you see, like I know this joke that if you're over 40 and you woke up in your bed and nothing hurts, that means you're dead. So what is, what does pain tells you there's something wrong, right? The pain to me, body pain tell me there's something wrong that I do. So let's say, I sit, I write papers and do my research, and then my back hurts. So what does that mean? Well, I typically think, okay, well, my back tells me, Andrew, walk. And I don't like sitting in this position for 8 hours a day. I want you to go to the Fontainebleau Forest. I want you to go for a run. So for me, pain helps me get the signals there's something not working, and then I try to fix that. And yeah, that's really sort of really interesting question, completely out of the blue.
Yes,
But yeah,
completely.
pain is a signal. And in fact, I went to the dentist a couple of days ago on Monday, and he was up like doing the filling on my tooth, and he obviously shut off my pain receptors,
Yes.
and then he cut a tiny piece of my lung with his machine. I'm like, damn, why did you shut off the pain? Because I only
Ah,
discovered it once I've like that pain reappeared. And like if he did that when I was sitting in his chair, I would like jump and scream and say, what the hell are you doing, dude? So when he stopped my sort of signal there's something wrong, my piece of lung was gone. It's okay. It's like healed and back, and I can speak. But it was like shit. Without pain, there is no life, basically.
it's very true. And, I don't want to talk about the pain in general, but your kind of comparison with that pain tells you to basically open your
Jump
mind and
out
do
of the
something
jump
about
out
it.
of the
It's a
chair, just like run
manifestation.
away.
Yes, it's totally manifestation. Well, thank you for that, and I will pass the message. I'm sure Alvin will listen to the episode. So here you go. Before we finish, there are two things. First of all, I would like, of course, to have the final question for you to the next guest. But before that, for the legacy and for the learning in general, let's say I'm a young person hoping to build a life around creativity in whatever form. What is one principle you'd want me to live by?
So that's what I tell my PhD students when I teach them, and then junior colleagues when I mentor them. Learn to recombine things systematically, whatever things are. And if somebody is looking for like a life hack, how do I be creative? The answer is recombine things. Ideas, concepts, whatever, like creativity is about recombination. The existence of the human species, as we mentioned, is based on the genetic recombination. So recombine something.
Well, thank you for that. And finally, the last question, whatever you want to my next guest, who's coming
Okay,
up again
well,
very
I'm
soon.
I'm yeah, I'm in the middle of a Fontainebleau forest, and that's the place where I love
Beautiful.
to go for a walk to sort of reflect on things. So the question I would ask is, how does nature makes you a better person?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's very philosophical and very kind and very beautiful. Thank you for that. Well, Andrew, it was an incredible conversation, and thank you for letting me voice out my passions and my understanding of creativity and sharing with you. And thank you for listening, of course. This episode will be posted on my IG Live. Sorry, on IGTV, I should say, at Events by Olga. It will also be on the YouTube of under all the conversations with Olga and on Spotify. So please go and listen to us here.
And the gremlin of Instagram struck again, but we managed.
Yes, so
I can
listen
hear
to
you now.
and there you cannot hear me?
I can, I can, I
You
can.
can, okay. So yeah, so there with you now, Andrew, we have 54 episodes with amazing people. So and more to come. So thank you so much again, Andrew, and
Yeah.
we'll talk soon. And hopefully, I will see you in Europe very, very soon, and in Singapore. I know that I'm missing you next time you're coming, but the time after, we are in for dinner. Now I can't hear you, but thank you.